The following is a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.
Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. It's your midweek fix for racing news and information. Brought to you by the Championship Racing Network. Now let's head trackside to join your hosts, Steve West and Matt Nicholson.
Welcome into the latest edition of Crossed Flags. I'm Steve West. Matt Nicholson joining me. Got producer John and producer Molly behind the scenes. We appreciate the work that they do, of course. And we appreciate you and the way that you can say that you are happy to have us joining you for the short amount of time that we're going to join you today. Subscribe right down there, whether it's on CRN Live or whether it's on Jocks TV. We appreciate it. And we know, of course, our fine partners over at Jocks TV appreciate it as well. We have got a couple of pretty big stories out, and one of them, there's actually three, but the third one, which is Formula E releasing their schedule for 2026. I say that, but truth be told, they've got one race in 2025. It's complicated. We'll deal with it on the big show on Saturday, so make sure you join us then. We'll also get into Formula One scheduling, but we're going to not really get into the details of that until Saturday's big show. We are going to concentrate, though, on one section. That's what we'll be dealing with for the most part a little bit later on in the show. But first things first, if you are a NASCAR fan, you probably found out about something that was going on in the Truck Series that was announced kind of ironically enough on Sunday, just before the Cup Series race. We have been wondering, and we've been talking about this on our show, I think since what, they got out pretty much there, Matt?
Been a few months for sure.
Yeah. I seem to remember getting the question almost from the moment that Dodge and Ram, of course it wasn't Ram at that point in time, it is now, got out of NASCAR. Now, Dodge cars got out officially in 2012. Dodge trucks, back then it was still the Dodge trucks, they got out officially in 2013. The last Dodge Ram bodied truck without corporate support ran in 2016. They're back. They announced it on Sunday, and they did this just before the Cup Series race on the basically same stage that they do the driver intro, something that Matt and I are very familiar with. And if you've been out to Talladega Superspeedway or just about any Cup Series track, you know what we're talking about. Before the race, they do all the driver introductions. They come out from behind a little backdrop and walk out onto the stage and greet all the people that are down there on pit road or on the track side. On that stage, they showed off this truck that you see right here in the middle, in between Matt and my picture. This is a mock-up. Keep that in mind. Ram has to get this approved officially by NASCAR. But they're talking about being able to do this for the beginning of next year. There's a specific reason for that. The only thing they need to get approved is that body.
I think the body's already approved, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, I was under the impression from what I heard on Sunday and yesterday, which we're doing this on Tuesday, so I heard it on Monday, that it was still had yet to go through the final approval process, so there's still maybe a tweak or two done. But even whether it's approved or not, you start to think, well, why does it take a Cadillac this long of a lead out time, or this company or that company this long of a lead out time, or that long of a lead out time to be able to get a car, or in this case a truck, into a particular series? And generally it's because you have to get so much stuff approved. Cadillac has to get the car approved, the chassis approved, has to make sure that the agreements with whatever team, in this case Ferrari, to get their powertrain before they build their own. They have to get that situation. All of that needs to get approved by Formula One, the FIA, the World Motorsport Council, so on. When it comes to NASCAR, when we're talking about the Cup Series or the Xfinity Series, not only will Dodge or whatever other brand, which we'll get to in a minute, that's the Stellantis car maker wants to put out for the Cup and Xfinity Series, whenever they get to that, then they got to get the body approved and they got to get the engine approved. because that's a totally different story. Truck Series is totally different. They're running effectively a spec frame, spec chassis, and they're running a spec motor. How many times have we talked about the fact that the Craftsman Truck Series, like the Arca Menard Series, runs Ilmor engines? They don't have to worry about engine approval. All they got to get approved is that body.
Really, by technicality, all they really have to get approved is the nose piece, the tail piece, and the really the hood area, because each hood's got their own different demographic, different diagnostic look. Diagnostic, my goodness, I can't even talk today. Different looks about it to match each manufacturer's body.
Right. Yeah,
because the greenhouse, the doors, and the bed panel, and the rear quarters are basically all the same. They're spec.
Yeah. But, if you line up a Dodge, a Ram pickup truck next to a Chevrolet Silverado, next to a Ford F-150, next to a Toyota Tundra, and you have them all facing you, you can see the difference in the faces. You go around to the back, you can see the difference in the way that the tail lights, tailgate, and all that is. And they want to have those trucks be able to emulate that kind of a look so that you still root for, and I know that producer John's in on this. He's been a long time fan of the Dodge trucks, or now the Ram trucks. So he wants to be able to easily define the difference between the trucks he's looking for and the trucks that he doesn't care about. I'll just put it that plainly.
Right. And to me, looking at the front of that truck, it has a lot of characteristics to me of the Chevrolet Silverado nose.
Yeah, in some ways, I would agree with that. And it's kind of strange to say that, because if you line them up beside each other in real life, it doesn't seem like they would have that many similarities to them. But, there's some to it, I will admit. And John's working on a little bit more of a close-up version so that we can take a better look at it here in just a moment.
Some of the contour lines.
Yeah, but when it gets right down to it, while he's working that up, I want to ask this question. It's Tim Kuniskis, who has just recently taken over as the chief whatever of the brand, specifically for the Ram brand. And Tim was very, very open about this when he got to talking about it after the fact on Sunday and on Monday. And basically came out and said, we're bringing this corsage, to put it in prom terms. We're bringing this corsage. We're bringing it to the big dance. There we go. We're bringing this to the big dance. So we're going to be ready for Daytona in 2025. We don't have a dancing partner. We don't have a prom date. So we've got the corsage. This is the flower we're going to give them, either to put on the wrist or to put on their dress. But we don't have a dancing partner. Is this overtly bold on the part of Ram to announce this now and say, yes, we're going racing, but we don't know with who?
As low as the count of trucks has been in each race this year so far, I don't think they're going to have a terribly hard time.
I wouldn't think. All right.
I don't think, especially with this being a factory-backed team, back, every one of them is going to be factory back, because I know he said between 4 to 6 entries aiming for Daytona.
Right.
I don't think they're going to have much of a problem, especially with who's a good one I can use for an example here. Say if they was to approach somebody like Ram.
Okay.
They got their Ford manufacturing team, but they're not factory back, even though they've got a Ford factory driver. Go figure.
Right.
If they were to go to them and say, "Hey, we want to put you underneath the fold," there's 3 trucks right there.
It's true.
Put you in the fold. All 3 trucks will have factory backing, and we're going to give you everything you need to be up front.
All right. Before
I would say now, Josh Ram would be a fool and not say yes.
I think you're right. Let's real quick talk about this as we're taking a look at this. As you look right under that headlight area, that kind of little indentation looking thing, that's where I kind of get the feeling a little bit of a Chevrolet.
Oh yeah.
You know, that's probably the biggest part of it to me. And now this is far from, even Tim Kaniskis said this is not necessarily the final design. Pardon me as I'm looking down, because I'm looking at the picture that producer John's got up and just the way that it comes up on the screen. But in looking at that, it may be very, very close indeed to what we see when this truck hits the track next February in Daytona. But I could easily see a little bit of a tweak or two here or there before they get this finalized.
Sure. I could see, especially in that nose area, I could see some areas being tweaked and maybe laid back a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And they would, to me, it would kind of mimic and mirror the Toyota Tundra, the way some of the geometry is around the front headlight area,
Yep.
coming around to the front quarter panels.
Right.
I could see that being a change too.
Okay. I think that they're on to the right track here, and this will be interesting. And to your point, let's get back to team situations. If we go back to when Toyota came in, and not necessarily into the Truck Series, specifically the Cup Series, Joe Gibbs Racing jumped on that opportunity. And the reason why, and Joe Gibbs said it before, said it then, and we've pretty much echoed that ever since, was the reason he went to Toyota is he said, well, I could be a little fish in the big pond of Chevrolet where Hendrick was always going to be the biggest fish, or I could jump into this little pond over here of Toyota and I am automatically my own biggest fish.
Yeah, and he's proven to be the great white of it.
Exactly. Sure. This is the opportunity for somebody who feels like, and you mentioned Rayom Brothers, that's one, certainly. We could look at, I don't know, maybe Nice Motorsports, for example, if they feel like they're not getting enough of Chevrolet's attention, they might make the switch from Chevrolet to Ram. Trying to think of a Ford team that might want to do it, but you get where I'm going. If you feel like you're, not quite getting the attention from your manufacturer that you really would like, this is your chance to jump out of being the little fish in that big pond into a smaller pond, but you're a bigger fish.
The ones that I would look at out of each manufacturer is, my eyes would be on Rayom out of Ford.
Okay.
Because between ThorSport and Rayom, they're the only Ford trucks that are in the field.
That's true.
Out of Toyota, there's really only one, and that's Stuart Friesen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tricon is, they're set. They're fully out there back in Toyota.
They suck all the air out of the room. I mean, if you stop and think about it. So yeah, I could see Stuart Friesen maybe doing it, especially now. He could strike while the iron's hot. I mean, he's coming off that win at Michigan.
Well, with Chevrolet, I don't think right now, I don't think anybody is going to be able to jump Spire being the prime Chevrolet team in trucks. McAnally Hilgeman, maybe, but Nice has got, and it's nothing against Al Nice or his program, because he's won his fair share of races.
Yes.
But if I was Al Nice looking to get something and get a little bit further up the grid, it's going to be, I would eyeball this move for sure.
Yeah. I mean, again, a lot of it just depends on how much support that you feel. If you're happy with the amount of support that you feel you're getting from your manufacturer now, great. Stick with it and go with it. And, far be it from us to predict that you're going to move. And I'm not even going to make a prediction, because the honest to God truth of it is, if I felt like I could do this, I would go across the state lines and go play the lottery on a much more regular basis. I don't know things that well, just to be real honest. But to me, it's going to be a Joe Gibbs going to Toyota kind of situation, where you're in this big, humongous pond. You know that you're never going to be the big fish in that pond. And this is a chance for you to jump over and become the big fish potentially in this pond. But I also found it interesting that NASCAR officials like Jim France, and we'll dive into this a little bit more on Saturday's big show as well. They said that the door's not shut, that they're still talking to at least one other manufacturer and maybe as many as two about still coming in at some point in time in the future to NASCAR's top series. We just talked about the reasons why it's easier to get into the truck series. You just basically got to get a body approved. And as you mentioned, it's not the full body. It's really just the nose piece and the tail piece. That's it. So it's a lot easier to do that. So if another company, and I'm going to throw out the one that has become apparently the bigger part of this rumor, and despite the fact that you're not as big a fan of this one as the other one, the rumor seems to be centralizing around Honda. I don't know what that might mean for their efforts in Formula One and or IndyCar, but that's where it's leading. But of course, the other one that does make a lot of sense, just because they've got a pickup truck out there in the American market, which is more like the Toyota, the Chevy, the Ram, and the Ford, and that's Nissan. So I would assume if he's talking about more than one, Honda and Nissan are probably the two most likely candidates. He said they're still in talks with them. Will it happen as soon as next year? I'm not going to go so far as to count on that.
I don't see that.
And the other side of that is, and I don't care which one it is, I'll tell you what, I'll put myself in the place of Honda. I'll put you in the place of Nissan. We've had talks earlier this year about trying to merge, and that all fell apart because of how much one wanted control versus the other. But in the end, if you're thinking about going in and I'm thinking about going into NASCAR, great. I'm going to pat you on the back and go, yeah, let's go race it out on the track and let's have a good time. But I don't necessarily want to try and fight against Ram for the amount of publicity that they're going to get by debuting up against them next year.
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, that's going to be tough because all eyes are really going to be on Friday night Friday when the lift gates drop at Daytona for the Truck Series opener next year.
Right.
And all eyes are going to be all over who has that logo on the back of their lift gate.
Absolutely. That's going to be big news. And of course, we'll keep updated on it and find out. When we find out, you'll find out. We'll know it and we'll pass it along ASAP. All right, let's turn our attention over to the first two series. I told you we're going to go into detail on Formula E releasing their schedule for their upcoming 11th season, which will actually start in December of this year. We'll deal with that Saturday on the big show. I will give you a hint. They've got more races next year than they do this year, and it may be if everything works out. And I use that term very pointedly. If it all works out, this will be the most races they've had on a schedule in any one season yet in their, again, short but 11-year history. But Formula One, their big brothers, they also put out their 2026 schedule. And we'll give you a look at it right here. It'll be exactly where you saw the initial picture for the Ram trucks coming in. This is a full 24 race schedule. It will begin in Australia in March. It will end in early December in the Middle East, specifically Abu Dhabi. It's a long schedule, but as you look at it, they are continuing their geographical pod scheduling. Start in Australia, move to Asia with China and Japan, then go to the Middle East. Then they come to North America. And that's really where we're going to concentrate here. We can go over the rest of this schedule coming up on Saturday, and we will coming up Saturday on the big show because we'll just have more time to go into it in detail. This is a podcast. We want to keep it relatively short and just basically give you some overviews. So I want to detail that first trip to North America because there are two trips they're going to take to North America. One is the full Western Hemisphere late in the year when they go Texas, Mexico, Brazil, Vegas before wrapping up the season again in the Middle East. But early in the year, this year, they did Miami, went back overseas to Monaco, and then came here to Canada. And you and I kind of looked at each other and went, why don't you flip that?
Yeah.
You know, if you're talking about this geographical pod scheduling, why don't you do it? They did it. As you can see right there, next year, May 1st through the 3rd will be Miami. That's going to be interesting, which I'll get to in a minute, because that one and one other race, the very next race, Canada, might actually see competition, because that's May 22nd through 24th. If you're thinking to yourself that date means something, oh, it does. Because Monaco,
stiff.
Yeah, Monaco now shifts into early June and kicks off a string of dates in Europe that runs through the August break into September. So they're going to spend a lot of time in Europe starting at Monaco. Again, detail it during the big show on Saturday. If this schedule holds out and next year's schedule between NASCAR and IndyCar holds pretty much as it did this year, let's start with that race in Miami. That race in Miami would go up head-to-head against IndyCar right here in our backyard where you and I were just about a month and a half ago, not quite even, when they came to Barber Motorsports Park.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy to have two major series within one geographic region of the United States.
Yeah. I mean, you know, how far is it from here to Miami? Flight wise, it's what, 4 hours?
Here to
Driving?
Miami?
Yeah, or not even, I don't think. I was trying to remember
About
how long that
about
flight
an hour and
was.
a half, 2 hours
Yeah.
tops.
Because I actually did a nonstop, but it was 2019, and a lot's happened since then. So it's a short flight to get from Birmingham to Miami. Of course, to get from Miami to Birmingham, you can't get there from here directly. So you either got to go through Atlanta or Tampa or Charlotte or Dallas or some other city way out in the middle of nowhere.
You can go Birmingham, Miami, straight shot both ways.
By who?
American Airlines.
Okay. That might be what, one flight a day?
I'm actually looking now.
Yeah.
It's actually
they couldn't do that for me. Let's put it that way.
Actually 2.
Oh, wow. That must have changed since 2019.
That is if I flip it around back again, the flight that goes from Birmingham to Miami, the early morning flight is a 2 hour and 1 minute flight.
Okay. And it was on a little gum wrapper about yay big. Yep. But that's Birmingham. Welcome to it. So, and keep in mind, you're, gaining, losing an hour, depending on which way you're going, because you're going from central to eastern or eastern back into central. But while I find that interesting, John, go ahead and bring that portion of the schedule back up, because 3 weeks later, and this is what I find real interesting, is usually when you talk about this, because when we get into this, you'll note that once we get past Monaco, they're racing in 2 and 3 race clumps. But yet they come to North America, they race in Miami at the beginning of May, they wait 3 weeks before they race again in Canada.
And it does not take 3 weeks to get from Miami to Montreal.
Not even driving at the speed limit of whatever's posted in whatever state or province in Canada you're talking about. Does not take that long. But the other thing about that May 22nd through May 24th weekend, that's Memorial Day weekend.
Yes, sir.
And that means that, yes, we will still get the greatest day in motorsports, which will have the Indy 500 and the Coca-Cola 600. But now, instead of the Monaco Grand Prix, we have the Canadian Grand Prix. And because of the deal that we've got and the timing of all this stuff, Fox will have the IndyCar race. We know that, the Indy 500. We know that it'll be on Amazon Prime because they've got a 7-year deal, NASCAR, between all of their television or broadcast partners. And ABC ESPN is more than happy to keep a hold of Formula One. And the Canadian Grand Prix, is going to be on ABC, just like it will be this weekend when it runs here in real life this year. It'll be on ABC again next year. Start time, Eastern time for that race in Canada is going to be 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central time. For the Indy 500, 12:45 p.m. Eastern, 11:45 a.m. Central. There's an hour and 15 minutes difference between the start of the Indy 500 and the Canadian Grand Prix.
Formula One officials are either really, really arrogant or thinking that they're going to beat the Indy 500 out, which there is not a snowball's chance, and you know what, of that happening.
No.
None.
At this point in time, I mean, even if you are the biggest racing fan on the planet, are you actually going to turn the Indy 500 off in favor of the Canadian Grand Prix?
Absolutely not.
The most that I would do, and I can do this on streaming, is if I pull a smaller TV in, I can have one TV on the Indy 500, and over off to the side, I can have the other one on the Canadian Grand Prix. And at that point in time, I would be considered, if I were a Nielsen house, I would be considered to be a viewer of both. So that's canceling it out. Nothing changes there. And you just said it right there. The most popular race on IndyCar's schedule is indeed that Indy 500. They even had more viewers this year for the Indy 500 than they did for the Daytona 500. Granted, the Daytona 500 was delayed by rain, so we don't know whether that would have stuck had the Daytona 500 got started when it was supposed to. But that's something to behold, because you and I have talked about how the Daytona 500 is a monster when it comes to ratings here in the country, and how the Cup Series is the ratings monster of all of motorsports here in the United States. So that's huge. I honestly don't know what the heck Formula One was thinking. If I was them, I'd be working with ABC to find that window and start in that window, because there is a window if everything runs as scheduled between the Indy 500 and the Coca-Cola 600, and they could fit that Canadian Grand Prix in there.
A window just large enough to where they could fit it in green to green.
Yeah, exactly. Because it only takes, give or take, 2 hours to get the race in 100% and do a pretty good amount of the post-race ceremonies as well.
Yep.
It can be done. And if
I'm just flabbergasted that from point A to point B, it is a 1,692 mile drive, or 24 hours maximum.
Yeah. Right.
You're taking a 3-week layoff.
Yeah, and I don't understand why. I mean, by all means, if you want to have if you still want to have the greatest day in motorsports and have 3 races on that day, I'm all about you. I'm happy to do it. But if I'm ABC, ESPN, and truth be told, if I'm Fox, I'm screaming bloody murder at this schedule, because you don't have to run at the same time that I'm running. There's enough window here to where we can all 3 coexist, even with you in Canada as opposed to Monaco.
Right. Absolutely right.
So a lot of it, I think, depends on exactly how much pull. And I think it would have to go this way, because obviously ABC, ESPN's getting their coverage from Sky Sports out of Britain.
Right.
So how much pull does ABC, ESPN have with Sky Sports out of Britain, who could then go, hey, you know what? Maybe if we want to continue to do what we have been doing in the United States and North America over the last several seasons, I'll put it that way, and that's continue to gain this foothold and gain more traction and gain more popularity, why don't we just move this back? And green flag coverage of the Coca-Cola 600 starts at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central?
Yes.
So why don't we move this back to a 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central race coverage start? And then that way, depending on what happens in the Indy 500, maybe some people come in late, but once the Indy 500 is over, we've got the stage to ourselves. until we hit NASCAR. And we know we're going to be done because that's how Formula One works. It is rigidly set up to be done within a 2-hour time frame.
That's what makes the most sense, but whether it actually happens or not will yet to be seen.
All right. Well, if anybody from ABC, ESPN is listening, that's our hint to you. And if anybody from Formula One is listening, maybe you want to think about taking our advice on that, okay? Again, we'll talk about this more on Saturday during the big show, go over the entire schedule a little bit more in detail, talk Formula E's 2025-2026 schedule. Again, one race, the first race of their season 11, as it will happen in December of this year. Then the rest of it will happen in 2026. We'll detail it all. We'll talk a little bit more about Rams plans, the rumors that continue around a Honda and or a Nissan. And if Rams coming in, doesn't that mean that we're going to get a Cup Series entry? Tim Kuniskis said indeed we would, but he actually deflected on whether or not it was going to be Dodge that was going to be the brand on the car. So we'll talk about all that and, of course, all the other news of the week. That'll be on the big show, CRN. That'll be 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central Time, Saturday morning. Join us then on CRN Live on YouTube. And until then, with our thanks to producer Molly, to producer John, and my thanks to my co-host Matt Nicholson, I'm Steve West. Thank you for checking us out on this edition of Cross Flags, and join us again Saturday and, of course, next week.
You've been listening to Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. For more content like this, subscribe to CRN Live on YouTube, and you'll be set to catch the 2-hour live show every Saturday morning at 9 Eastern, 8 Central.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.